What's good? Coming at you straight from Osaka, Japan. Thought I'd make a video walking you through my tech stack, basically the technologies I use to build my applications like Mindgarden and ZSync, which I've been really focused on over the last few months. So I wrote an article about this on my personal website, so this is basically a video version of that article. If you don't like videos, just read the article. Let's get into it. So first I'll give you a high-level rundown of my tech stack, and then I'll dive deeper into the rationale between why I use each technology. So basically, I go full stack TypeScript, React and Next.js on the front end with TailwindCSS for styling, Zustand for state management, React Query, Cloudflare Pages for static sites, Google Cloud Run for servers. That's the front end. On the back end, I go Node.js, Express, although I'll swap it out for Fastify if I need that performance. TS REST, it basically allows you to define your models using a schema library like Zod, and it automatically generates the TypeScript types that you can use on the back end as well as the front end if you choose to. And then you can auto-generate OpenAPI Swagger documentation. And then I use TypeORM for my ORM. I don't love it, but I know how to use it. It's what I'm most comfortable with, and I do prefer the ORM to not using the ORM just because I do feel like it's a really big productivity boost. But I generally generate all the SQL queries with knex, K-N-E-X. I don't use TypeORM's query builder because it sucks. I use Postgres as my database, Redis if I need to, Google Cloud Run for the servers, DigitalOcean if I need a VPS, although I might swap that out for a cheaper provider. And then I use DigitalOcean's managed Postgres as well. And then I use Google Cloud Storage for static files. And I have everything in a monorepo that I orchestrate with pnpm workspaces. And then I use GitHub Actions for CI/CD for that sweet continuous integration and deployment. I generally stick to REST APIs because it's simpler, better tooling than GraphQL, and I don't personally find GraphQL to be worth the additional complexity, as well as lock into monolithic frameworks like Apollo. That being said, it's not like I don't like GraphQL. I think it works really well, but when I'm working on my own projects and I'm optimizing for speed, then I prefer the REST API. And also the way it's set up, if I wanted to create a GraphQL API, it would be pretty easy to do so because I'm using TypeORM. If you split things out into controllers and services, then it would be fairly easy to do. And actually it'd be nice if I could auto-generate the GraphQL API. That's something that frameworks like Feathers.js do, and maybe if I have the time one day I'll build that. But I would consider checking out TRPC as well, but I think if you have if you need an external facing API, then all right. Now let's dive into why I use everything. So, okay, I'll start on the front end. So Next.js, personally, I don't see any reason not to use Next.js. Even if you have just a static front end site, Next.js also allows you to do that. But if you decide later that you want that server-side rendering, then it's just as easy as adding a get server-side props function. So why wouldn't you just use Next.js? Unless you just really need the maximum configurability and the smallest bundle size possible. But generally speaking, you don't really need that, and developer speed is the most expensive. Particularly if you're building your own projects, just do what will get things done the fastest, and if you need to optimize later. So I use Next.js. I don't necessarily recommend the app router right now, which is like the new way of doing things, the app folder. I do use it for some projects, but it's definitely a learning curve. It is kind of confusing. To be fair, I do use it, but if I really need to go as safe as possible, I would probably personally stick to the Pages way of doing things just because it's a lot easier. But that being said, it's a lot easier if you want to do like page animations, for example, which I use on my personal website, jbernier.com. So yeah, I don't know, it's kind of mixed. But generally, like, I think if you really want to be safe, I would stick with the Pages folder. But the app folder is production ready, I believe, so you can use that. Zustand is the best state management library out there. I'm shocked. So I've been interviewing recently, actually. I've been shocked at how many people are still using Redux. I mean, in 2023, I think Redux is trash. It's stupidly verbose and boilerplate heavy. I mean, like, why deal with all the ceremony of creating action creators and then dispatching actions and creating reducers when you can just call a function. I have checked out some other state management libraries like Recoil, outrageously complicated. I posted a question in GitHub issues that nobody answered. If somebody answers that, then I'll change my mind, but otherwise it's crap. TailwindCSS is the greatest thing to happen to front-end development in the last like 5 years. I would guess it 3 to 5x is my productivity. Doesn't require learning anything really framework specific because it's just plain CSS. Gotta use that Tailwind. React Query, I do use that on ZSync, which is my Reddit clone. I'm not in love with it. I don't love the defaults, but it does get the job done. If there were an alternative that had cache normalization, I would definitely switch. But for 99% of just general web dev stuff, Node.js is enough. It scales very well and much better than Python, PHP, all that stuff. TS REST. This basically, like I said, you can define your model as Zod schema, and then it auto-generates TypeScript types. Automatically handles input validation, for example, based on these types, and then you can automatically generate Swagger docs and OpenAPI specification. So, love TS REST. I use Express. That's just because I'm comfortable with it, but Fastify does support much higher requests per second. So if you really need that performance, then use Fastify. But honestly, if you're just trying to ship something, it's not really the highest priority in the beginning. And I don't imagine it being that difficult to swap out Express for Fastify. TypeORM, again, I don't love it. I use Next to generate the queries, but I do find that using the ORM is a productivity enhancer compared to just handling all the SQL yourself and all the migrations and all that. I love the synchronize feature in development mode. I mean, it saves a ton of time. Basically, that just makes it so it means so if you update some columns in your table, then it'll automatically update your database without you having to manually write the migration. Obviously, be careful in production. You're not supposed to do that on production, but to be honest, I'm doing it because it works. I mean, just be careful if you need to change a column type, and definitely test locally first. Because, for example, I remember changing a column type from a text to a scitext, which is a case-insensitive text, and it just cleared all the values. But obviously, I was testing on my local database first, so I caught that, and it was fine in production. And it's pretty easy to export your Postgres database and import that locally, so you have a production-looking database on your local host that you can use to test before you push things to production and catch all this kind of stuff. Anyways, it supports migrations if you need to do that. Again, I don't love it. I don't like the class validator library. Would rather use something like Zod. I kind of want to look into Drizzle ORM, which I believe allows you to specify your schema using something like Zod. Prisma, I haven't used Prisma version 2, but my impression is that it seems like it's really easy to get up and running, but it doesn't give you that full flexibility. That's how Prisma 1 was, for example. So with ORMs like TypeORM and SQLize, you can do anything, and I don't want to be limited by my ORM, so that's why I don't use Prisma. Again, this is just like from glancing at the doc, so I could be off. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm not using Prisma. All right, so Postgres, I mean, like, why would you not use Postgres, honestly? I mean, unless you're Facebook or something and you need some like super scalable NoSQL thing for your whatever. But I mean, in general, Postgres can practically do anything. Of course, the relational SQL stuff, it can do the NoSQL stuff because it can store JSON, geospatial data, vector embeddings for search. Yeah, it's a vector database. Of course, the vector stuff is going to be a lot slower than dedicated vector database. But for hosting, again, Cloudflare Pages for static sites, super easy. Google Cloud Run. So Google Cloud Run is a serverless compute platform that basically it's super easy to get set up because basically you just Dockerize your application and then you just deploy a Docker container and then server set up. You pay for what you consume. It's just extremely, well, okay, I'm not gonna say extremely easy. If you're a total noob, then it's gonna be a lot more difficult than setting up something like Vercel or Heroku. There definitely is some work up front, but once you get it up and running, it's just super easy. Practically no vendor lock-in because you're just deploying a Docker container. You're not like doing some Google Cloud Run specific work. It's just Dockerizing your application. I know everybody loves AWS. AWS is the most popular. Although to be fair, that's more for enterprise stuff. If just for personal projects, it's crazy complicated and expensive. In any case, AWS doesn't really have an equivalent to Google Cloud Run. So I mean, I prefer Google Cloud Run. Yeah, it's just easier. And I use Google Cloud Storage for static files, but that doesn't really matter. You could use AWS S3 or DigitalOcean's storage thing or whatever. I use DigitalOcean for my managed Postgres server just because it's $15 a month for the cheapest tier. A lot more expensive on Google Cloud or AWS. I use Cloudflare to handle not only the static sites with Cloudflare Pages, but also DNS, CDN, and also now for buying domains as well. GitHub Actions for continuous integration and deploy it. Gotta have that continuous integration and deployment. I mean, you want to make things as easy as possible. You should not be manually deploying. It's a waste of time. I have everything as a monorepo, meaning I have the front end and the back end in the same code repository. So this is the code repository for this Mind Garden project that I have. As you can see, I've got the packages folder, and then I've got backend, front end shared. Can just show you my GitHub Actions scripts. Yeah, I'll open source this one day. Got to use those AI tools like GitHub Copilot, of course, all the LLMs like ChatGPT, Bing, Bard, etc. And then I want to check out some other tools, like there's this IDE Cursor that is supposed to be like a better Copilot, so I want to check that out. But I'm not using that right now. Just use VS Code. Yeah, so this is what I'm most productive with. I just want to say that your tech stack doesn't matter, really. Your customers don't care about your tech stack. One of my biggest inspirations is this guy named Peter Levels, and he makes millions of dollars in PHP and jQuery. Your tech stack really doesn't freaking matter. Just use what you're comfortable with and don't prematurely optimize it. Ship. Focus on shipping. Get stuff done. If you're getting real usage and then stuff is starting to break, you're getting scaling concerns, and then you can optimize things. But the problem most developers make is they build stuff that nobody cares about, nobody uses, it's not solving any problem, or maybe it is, but there's no marketing, so nobody knows about it, and so it might as well not exist. Marketing is honestly 95% of the business. Of course, you have to have a product that solves a problem, but the tech itself, I mean, it's got to solve the problem. But the tech stack, nobody cares. Use what you're most comfortable with. If you need to optimize later, that's a good problem, and then you can optimize things. Don't prematurely optimize. Get stuff done. Ship. Don't just watch videos of people talking about tech stacks. Ship. Build stuff. If that's your goal. But I mean, it comes down to what your goal is, right? Who am I to tell you what to do, because it depends on your goals. Okay. If you haven't already, subscribe to my newsletter. You can go to jbernier.com, type in your email, and then also check out my Reddit alternative called zsync.xyz, posting a lot there. Follow me on Twitter. Also check out mindgarden.app, this next project that I'm building, but actually it's under construction, so maybe don't really use it now, but it does power some sites that I have, like my personal website and codefire.dev that I built. It's just a little mini site. But anyways, more on MindGarden in the future. That's it for now. Let me know what you use. Let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you later. All right, peace!